disasters, and many other factors. The city seems to be unsafe. Munish Babu is a very common phrase where people from Rajasthan who settled in enormous number in Calcutta generally tend to call Babus, and the Bengalis are kind of somehow or the other historically linked as Babus. Would you be interested? So this is a building which has been lying abundantly. I'm going to speak about that very fast, and you know the usual, because you're all kind of quite aware of how our project goes about. So the idea, the brief was for a change, not for a museum. You know, we have been seeing buildings are getting reused and for a museum, and that's the death. A bit like England, which has gone that path for a long time. And you know, we try to return the property to its grandeur. And here, I would like to say, I'd like to re-emphasize and remind all our architectural fraternity who are immensely coming into the bandwagon of conservation as a practice as well. It's like Tata, you know. Tata said, Rishi Modi was chairman of Tata at one point of time. He said, let us change the slogan of Tata to, we also make steel. And Ratan Tata came and said, we also make steel. If we don't make steel, we don't earn and we don't eat. So he changed it to we make steel, right? So, so I think we need to know, when we jump into this bandwagon of increasingly heightened awareness of conservation, of architectural practices and offices, to also educate themselves about the nuances of conservation as well. So I just touch upon, for a new project, architecture project, soil test and other things are now needed to be done, all the environmental factors needed to be done. For an old building, it's very important to have a very detailed understanding of the building itself. Yeah? And therefore, and then decide what is to be replaced and how much to be replaced. Until unless you don't know in that detail, I think you become very sweeping. Let's change this. Let's remove this, and so on. And in the process, you actually raise a lot of the significance of the building. So, 3 tenets. Minimal and essential. Now, how do you arrive at the essential? How do you arrive at the essential? Only when you know the building thoroughly. Compatibility and reversibility, which is often not fully possible, but I really like the idea, if we can bolt something to an old building, if that need arises, and if the future can do it better, we can unbolt them. So every conservation project has to have a conservation plan. And that is not something to be given overnight, right? And that is my observation in some of the architectural practice that goes on in this country. So this building, which is Babu invited me, I added another floor to that building, and we repurposed it for various activities. You know, Calcutta is a very inward-looking part in the northern, traditional north neighborhoods of Calcutta. So that every building has a courtyard. And so in that courtyard there is a place for God, house God. So it was actually kept.
Try and not, you know, sort of move around at this point in time. If people can sit down, if you have an urgent call to make, this is a good time to step out of the hall. Welcoming you all. I understand all of you had a choice between choosing the discussion in Hall A or Hall B. I suspect you made the wise decision. You know, this is an important one. The second thing is I want to also acknowledge the deserves a special praise. And Mumbai, right? And of course, a moderator from the city of Jaipur. So it's nothing of this idea. The format of the panel is 5, ideally 6-7 minutes. Right? We want to keep that short.
need not be great lobbyists, but we should try to kind of influence our clients who could be very much influential in their respective city or municipality or state, who could kind of lobby the regional authorities and bring home this idea that restoring old buildings, even if it is a ruin, could be sustainable and economic. Thank you. So I maintain that order. Aman is the pioneer, as we all know. I request Aman, Nimrana Hotel Group, co-founder with, I remember Francis Vaxier, yeah. So I request Aman to come on stage and deliver his presentation. Thank you.
Friends, I think 10 minutes is rather strict, but so it must be because we have so many people. So it works out in my case to 1 decade per 2 minutes. So I go really fast. And I will not talk as much as show you pictures. I think that might be self-explanatory. But what I'm talking about, I'd like to begin by saying, is not about. There are many kinds of heritage. There's the Archaeological Survey of India, which looks after the Taj Mahal, the Red Fort and all that. And there are state archaeological buildings. So what we have touched are the drain inside the gutter, if you want to say, because this is building that nobody looked at. So when I got Nimrana in 1986, Francis was not part of it then, I had 2 Indian partners. Everybody said, "This, are you completely crazy?" So now if you look at pictures of it and you say, and you can have purist approach and so on, these are unlisted buildings. These are buildings that could have fallen and nobody would have noticed, or a developer could have wiped them. So, so we called our hotels non-hotels because none of the buildings that we restored were actually built to be hotels. They were built for warfare, they were built to keep people out, and now we are welcoming people in. So the way we work is that when we go to an area, let's say Nimrana, in 1986, India was another country. If you went to get electricity, they didn't even have a piece of paper in the department. They'd say, "Apna kagaz laiye or phir likhiye," So, and everybody thought I was an agent of Rajneesh who was going to do some smuggling or something, And there were articles in the paper, so there was a huge negative energy at that moment. So we use the people to restore, and India has the most brilliant people wherever you go, because we've done some 30 projects in 18 states, and I can't say that there's any state where people are not clever. We are the world's only continuously alive civilization. And that's saying a lot. And if you look at Mesopotamia, Greek, Rome, Egypt, everything has risen and died. So we are going on and on forever. And therefore, in this short life, one has been able to restore the properties of Chauhan, Jat, Sikhs, Marathas, Kumanis, Garhwal. So there's so much to do. And the more you do in India, the less you've done, actually. So, if you saw this building, or if you passed it by, even today, I'm talking of many, many years ago, 30 years ago, if somebody looked at this, anybody in the government would say, knock it down and make whatever architects make these days, But the Chief Minister of Punjab once, Amrinder Singh ji, called me and said, come and tell RPWD people not to knock all the buildings that they are knocking, because what they're making is so ugly. So it is a lot more work, but it's so much more rewarding when this becomes this or that. Since the colors are very vibrant and sitting in the landscape, it's not so bright. The advantage of old properties is that they're the best sited of all. If you want to live in Rashtrapati Bhavan because it's in Raisina Hill, we can't do that anymore. I actually wanted you to say, to whistle or something at 7 minutes so that,
Yeah.
if you're keeping an eye on that. Yeah. So this is a Danish building too. A British building. These tables, I think that humans are now valued lower like animals, so I think we can sleep in this table. They do that in the Rambagh Palace also. They've done all the buildings below and so on. But the idea was not to make it luxurious. Luxury is a word. I have some problem with it in India because I think that we can't go on being Marie Antoinette. We can't just say, what is your image of yourself when you're sitting in a bathtub with rose petals or whatever the advertising people say, I mean, by the time people can afford to stay in hotels which are so expensive as they are, the lady, when she takes off her clothes and looks herself in the mirror, she wants to commit suicide. She's not that model that you're showing in the picture, So I think this whole fake thing about, you will become this, you will become that, I think let's be experiential, let's be real, If we get water on top of a hill, that's already an achievement. And if we got a great efficient tap to do it, it's all right. I mean, gold-plated one can stay. This is a Dari floor I designed. I've done these in other places. So that in a hot place like Rajasthan, with 8 months it's warm, spreading out Dari. You can even order them. In the Bikaner jail, they used to make 60 feet wide Daris. I went to see the loom. But if you make a Dari like that, and a dust storm comes, who is going to roll it, wash it, dry it, beat it? So I think, the whole thing is about putting... So within the fort or the edge of it or an extension of it, so this was the ruin of Nimrana, and it was selling for 1 lakh rupees for 40 years. So when I actually bought it for 3 lakhs or 4 lakhs, I don't remember, people said, are you crazy? Nowadays you go and they say a WC is for 4 lakh rupees, so which plays music and which does all kinds of things to you, and you're only defecating actually. So I must be terribly old school, but I'd rather rebuy Nimrana again than sit on one of those gorgeous WCs. So this is Nimrana today because it was in so many layers, but they had gone to sleep. So when you woke them, re-woke them, opened windows, did whatever you did, I think one of these seminars should really happen there because then you get to see that it's about experiencing the materials and everything is there. So being a continuously alive civilization, I think you know that in Calcutta and Aba, and when you work, if you work in Kerala, you get great people who work with wood. This was 10 minutes or 7?
7.
Oh, 7. No. So this is the ramparts, There was a torture chamber where they used to tie people's feet and hang them down and question them from a window, and we made this into a chessboard for having tea. And that tower which is fitted there, because people said, we can't climb 14 levels, so a lift has been fitted into it. It doesn't really show, but Delhi Sultanate Archive, because it dates back to 1467, it's got the great architecture, the woodwork of Gujarat, Rajasthan. So even the materials that are used inside are recuperated materials. They're not, the destruction of Kerala was happening at the time when it was happening. So all those things were used here with a new eye. So from outside it is what it is, but inside there are pipes running here, there are girders, all kinds of strange walls. So you make a solid marble bed and people sleep on it and they don't know what was under it. Because basically you're paying for the experience of, so it's not purist. I would call it restoration alone. I think you use many words, yes. Revitalization is a good word also to use, because you've actually changed the end use. This is the colonial part where we did some British and French rooms because the pillars outside are like the Connaught Place ones, the Doric pillars. This was a little staircase lying in Trivandrum under a tree from some demolished church. And so we had to turn a window into a door because the bathroom had to be outside the hall. So that was used. So I think one should also enjoy doing what you are doing. And when people enjoy Nimrana, it's about as much enjoyment in doing the place. A book came out saying 100 things you must do before you die. And Nimrana is in that, you know. So I thought that's crazy, you know. So there are the Ravalis, which are 2 billion years old, and which are fabulous, which are all over Nimrana, you know. So I did an Indo-Italian restaurant where we, you know.
Areas. And very small annual suggestions were given, incorporated. So almost 60,000 passengers travel a day.
And all the doors blocked. And 30-foot high ceilings. A Japanese came and said, you know, it could be 3-4 floors in Japan, you know. So, and we put high beds, so he said, how do we get on it? So I said, you jump, you know. So then we've got steps now, you don't have to jump. Yeah, but if you see the height of the ceiling. So you go through all this, but you forget it. Like when you start making a building, you look at the foundation, you stand there in the dust, in the sun, but when the thing is ready, it's over with. This was the portico where the horse carriages used to arrive. So, and I should say. Sorry?
2 more hours.
No.
Which means the house should be read as minutes.
So I'll show you the pictures because we are speaking to an enlightened audience, they understand these things, you know. So in the middle of all these trees, you know, when you have ruins and suddenly the ruins wake up, this is Gwalior, this is in Kumaon. So the idea is not to build, but there are old houses, there are ruins, somebody sold it, somebody doesn't come there. So you restore them in the way that you can restore them, and it is splendid. There are some very contemporary spaces within that. This is the last project which I have been busy with for the last 15 years. So this was actually something I went to the Rajasthan government, and Bhairav Singh Shekha was the chief minister. It was 100 years ago, I think. And he said that they had no money to pay the officers. I said, why don't you tender these things? Why don't you do something with it? He said, Acha, report likhi. So there was Colonel Rivero, and we went and did a whole report on the Nazul properties, and nothing happened, and then this is how I work actually, because I'm not an architect. So I can see how it happens. I make a photograph, I draw on it, and because, you know, the foundations are there, the building is there, you don't have to be so purist and so realistic. You create your axes, you do whatever, and eventually, when it's built, it should look like it was always there. You know? This is a kind of sunken pool because it's a lot of breeze, so that we should do this at Vidya. It would be fun. It's not very far from here. There were roofless structures, you know. The camel lived here while we were doing the grinding of the thing, and this is his space. So there's lots to do, lots to show, lots more to do. But the only reason why I wouldn't do anything more, especially in Rajasthan, is because everybody's so busy obstructing your work, you know. They think you're going to restore this and when you die, run away with this, you know. So they make sure that you can't do anything. So you have to be stubborn, you have to be, I think you forgot to mention bribery actually. That's very essential. So if you don't bribe people, which we don't, I don't think I need to bribe India to restore its heritage. So you're troubled and troubled. And so it is, sorry, I think it is the end. No, so every room is done by an artist. This is Anjali Menon, and this is Amrita Shergill, and so on. So you really have to come and enjoy the space. Thank you.
Can I request our next I'll tell you how many hours are left.
Sorry? Okay, great. And where do I start? Hi. So we were talking about adaptive reuse. I was trying to wrap my head around the concept of it. But to me, a lot of adaptation need not be at a building level, and it almost begins to, for me, it starts at a city or at a town or a neighborhood, and why can't we adapt spaces and start reclaiming those urban spaces for our own? My time doesn't start till my slide comes on. So, 25 years ago, in Bombay, we got what is called the 95 Heritage Regulations for Greater Bombay, which was a pathbreaker in conservation, because until 1995, in India, we only had one protection for heritage, which was the Archaeological Survey of India. So a city like Bombay, which mostly was colonial, most of the structures were less than 100 years old and not under any protection, were really up for grabs. And also add to it the highest real estate values and the fact that you had the lab conditions for decay. You had high humidity, the perfect temperature for fungal growth, heavy monsoons, and Bombay would not have survived as we know of it had we allowed that to happen. So in 1995, what the heritage regulations did was change the idea that we move out from the monument-centric focus to looking at our urban neighborhoods. 25 years ago, I became part of this a citizens initiative called the Horniman Circle Association. What we did was to look at the whole area of Horniman Circle. This predates Connaught Place by 50 years as an urban design statement for business and for commercial activity. And we said, when we look at this space, why should we not take back from the idea of heritage and reposition heritage as a people's heritage, people's conservation, rather than this really ladies who do lunch or very elitist aspect of conservation. So we did a study of all the banks in the area, and we found that in a walking distance of 5 minutes, there were 33 banks. We went to the Reserve Bank of India and asked them to call these 33 banks for a meeting and said, could you do one thing, start something called a Banking District Association, and each bank give 1 lakh rupees. So we would have gotten 33 lakhs. And we said, when we're looking at a city, let's not say this is private, this is public, because at the end of the day, when Aman or Manish or any one of you are visiting Bombay, you're not going to say, acha, wo gir raha hai, to gir sakta hai, kyunki privately owned है, ये अच्छी दिखनी चाहिए building क्योंकि heritage है, और ये government की building है. So the idea of a city or a town, everything works, but that's your public realm. So why not look at these spaces? And we said, okay, let's do one thing. We will A, ask the banks, and secondly, we will do a fundraiser. So in the garden of this Horniman Circle, we had a little fundraiser, and Sharda Dwivedi, bullied Tarun Tailiani to gift a few objects which we put on auction. We had a sit-down dinner. In the good old days of 95, 96, we charged 2,000 rupees per diner, and we raised some money. But we only raised 6 lakh rupees. So what we did is, we picked the worst case situation, and this was a old rent tenanted building called Botawala building, which belonged to a trust. And obviously the trouble with rent controls in India affect every city, and there were offices inside, shops inside, but nobody was spending on what is the public face of the building. So we said, let's look at historic facades, because these are our city's visiting cards, these are our city's public face. And with 6 lakh rupees, we restored this building, which was just a very small intervention. We never got the rest of the 33 lakhs promised by the banks, but with 6 lakhs, we were able to demonstrate that you can clean up a facade. All you need is lime plaster, you need to remove the ficus growth, but most importantly, remove the signboards, because if you were paying for the facades, you told the tenants that, okay, we are bringing you your facade back, but please reorganize your signboards. And this is the simplest signage regulation we did. And then we realized later this was the first urban signage control in India. What it did is, we didn't ask the government for one penny, and gradually, Christian Lubov, Hermes, they've all come in. One shoe costs 6 lakh rupees perhaps, but what it has done is recycled and readapted that urban space to become a city, to be taken back by the city. We did a similar exercise. I'm a founder member of the Kalaghoda Association. In 1998, we were 7 people. We got together. We were having tea at Mr. Sabawala's office, and he was the grandson of Sir Kawasji Jahangir, who had paid for the Elphinstone College, which is right there. And he said, I find it embarrassing when I walk past my grandfather's bust because this area is dilapidated. After working hours, nobody's there, and there are drug peddlers sitting around. So we said, let's do one thing. We have take this city's area and reappropriate. So recycle an urban space which is that central triangular parking lot. We took the parking lot, turned it into the Kalaghoda Festival, and we recycled every space in this area, from footpaths to back gardens to alleys, and turned it into a celebration of contemporary art. From 1998 to now, every year the Kalaghoda Festival runs without charging a ticket. We've had Ustad Zakir Hussain perform free. We've had every great artist in India perform in the parking lot, open to public, no invitations, no passes required. And what we did with that is, over the years, this was Elphinstone College. We had 21 lakhs and we restored the biggest building which belonged to the government. We said, we don't want the government to put money, we will restore it and give it back to the city, because again, this is we are reappropriating our public facade. In Bombay, we don't have space. We are not like Jaipur or Delhi, where there's a lot of large square foot flats and large bungalows. So we use every square inch of space. We reappropriated the steps of the town hall to have rock bands and performances at night, and at the daytime festivals for children. And what it did was to have the government then start thinking about this very thing that Manish said, is that heritage buildings could be assets and not liabilities. So what it did is, finally we got the Public Works Department to set up a trust for heritage, and that helped restore this public Ishatic library, is one of the oldest public libraries in India, from this to this. We've now used it for public functions, for cultural activities, a lot more than just a library. Convocation Hall is another exercise. This is a Sir Gilbert Scott building, high Gothic, an amazing neo-Gothic structure. This was restored, and when we restored it, today we had Angela Merkel giving lectures here. It's been used for press meetings, it's been used for public lectures, performances, and again reappropriated by the city, because we don't have space, so we want to use every square inch. This is the Venice Biennale. And for the last few years, I've been trying to convince the Bombay Municipal Corporation that the last surviving industrial mill in Bombay is India United Mills 2 and 3. And what is happening here is that in the heart of Bombay, you have 8 hectares of space. And we could turn this into the best cultural space in the city. And this is a plan which I hope one day will happen, of reappropriating this oldest textile mill and turning it into something that's even better than the Venice Biennale. So this is still work in progress. I'm not promising anything. But the idea is that we can look at such spaces in the West. Why can't we do it in India? One such experiment was the Opera House. This was a cinema hall which stopped operating for 22 years, and it was privately owned. This was in such a bad state that the government actually said it was declared dilapidated and unsafe. And when Maharaja Sahib Gondal asked me to take on this project, I went to 6 structural engineers, the top 6 structural engineers of Bombay. Each one of them turned me down. So this was the strangest experience, when I would go and say, here, I've got this really exciting project, and they'd say, too much of a liability. Finally, I got Mr. Satish Zubelia, who used to walk in with his white safari suit and his cigarette, walk through the site and say, ye kholo, ye tod do, and with his 10th cigarette, he would exit the site. We managed this perfectly well, but it took us many, many years. And this is what the building looked like. The inside was kind of an art deco, quasi, sort of neoclassical. We found old photographs, and the old photograph actually showed us that instead of this art deco interior, because it had been a cinema hall for so long, there were actually a neoclassical Baroque kind of a side balcony. So what we did for for archival research is watch a lot of Hindi films. And we started looking at a lot of Hindi films because right from the time of Prithviraj Kapoor, you had a lot of theatre and films being shot here. We finally came across one film in the late 60s, early 70s with Rajesh Khanna and Shashi Kapoor, the name escapes me, where the last scene where the fellow is coming to catch, the police officers coming to grab the criminal, the fellow is sitting on the balcony, and it was a completely different balcony. So we ripped up the sides and we found the vestiges of this balcony. This is now from an opera house, it became a cinema hall for 22 years of absolute devastation. And when we put it back as an opera house, this was a very brave leap of faith, because when the owners asked me what should we do, I said let's turn this back into an opera house. We had no idea of economic feasibility, and they did take this on, but it's been running packed houses. It's difficult to get a booking at opera house, and now it's been 6 years. So this does work financially as well. These are some before and after pictures. Another one is an abandoned Kanyashala. This was a Marathi school for girls, and in Girgaon, people don't want to study in Marathi. So this finally, they came down to 8 students and then they closed it up. This was what the inside looked like. We got a woman patron to turn this back into a women's college, a women art institute. So looking at repurposing cultural spaces, this is just a very small example of an unlisted building. It was up for demolition and in Kalagoda. And finally we convinced the clients that we could adaptively reuse this. This turned out, and what I hated about most such structures are these rolling shutters outside, because the original width of the doorway is wider than you put a rolling shutter. And if you look all around Girgaon, Kalba Devi, Gam Devi, you have these beautiful wooden folding doors. So we said, let's just bring back the wooden shutters. And what it did is, this was 2007, the best thing is that every building in Kalagura has copy-pasted this, so cafes, everybody's gotten rid of rolling shutters, from Sapyasachi to Abujani, Ritu Kumar, everybody's come into this place. So when we talk of gentrification, we tend to say, "Arey, this is so bad." I really feel in India, we treat our heritage like, the old Leela Chitnis mother. She's a widow, she's emaciated, malnourished in a white sari. But if we do something, we would rather let her die than do something about it. So we said, let's give a makeover to our mother. Now this is a small project we did way up in Himachal, Viceregal Lodge. We turned the old fire station into a little bookshop cafe, 2009. We turned in Jaipur, this was the pump house. This is the pumping station, waterworks, built during the Maharaja's time, and this was abandoned. So we turned this into the pump house cafe, little small intervention. Opera house, we then had a little wine cafe upstairs. We turned the garden into another garden cafe, and then created a jazz bar in the garage area. This is a small villa in Goa, which we turned into a homestay. These are some more pictures of this. In the tea estate in Munnar, we turned an old tea bungalow into a hotel. Very English and very sort of country English theme. This is a Jhalabar guest house. This was a dark bungalow which we turned into something that could generate revenue. Yes, museums, palaces, Chaumahala Palace, but again, because we're in Rajasthan, Bharatpur, it's a tiny little town it's sort of semi-rural. And this was Bharatpur Palace, which then became a museum. For Rajasthan government, we redid the museum. Today, it's better than an international quality museum. And because we lit it up and we said, Rajasthan mein itni garmi hoti hai, who wants to go out in 48 degrees to a museum? So let's extend the museum hours. We extended the museum hours to 9 p.m. So people can go there in the night and enjoy the light. In Patiala, Kila Mubarak, the main fortress, we first worked on the restoration, but now we're working with a hotel that becomes a museum hotel. We went halfway through on Ver, which is a bagichi. We restored this Jat bagichi to be used for a dark bangla. In Bikaner House in Delhi, we turned the bus adda into a cultural space. It's the most happening cultural art space, contemporary and yet showcasing Rajasthan's art crafts. So we've used Araish, we've used inlay in a very contemporary medium because this is Rajasthan's visiting card in Delhi. This is Araish and Tikri used in a very contemporary way. So really turning dead, decrepit structures into something alive. And I will end with this. We were consultants to Jaipur Metro, and when the underground metro work was happening, this was Choti Chopper where the metro station was to happen. This is what it looked like any Sarkari roundabout with a pole that doesn't work. We found some old photographs and we saw this. So we said, what if there is actually the Kund surviving below this? We went back to Vasundhara Raje and we said, ma'am, if we find an archaeological excavation, we'll have to change the design of the station. So it'll cost us 6 months. She said, go ahead. We did an archaeological excavation. We found the Kunds. We found the gaumukhs in marble that used to spout water. This was sent to Albert Hall. And we restored the Thon. We created an archaeological gallery below this and then lit up the streets so that we can enjoy Jaipur by night. Thank you so much.
We now have Dr. Abu Saeed from Dhaka, Bangladesh. And we share a lot of similarities between Calcutta and Bangladesh. You both the flag and you're in Dhaka from Calcutta. So it's as close as that. Physically, mentally, and so many other ways.
Physically, mentally, and also as a mentorship also, you should say. Because I worked with Monish even I started my conservation project, one of my conservation projects in 2008 or 9 with the support of Monish in Bangladesh, Monish Chakraborty. Actually, the premises of conservation is totally different from India to Bangladesh. Because in India, you have role model, you have expertise, fund, we have also fund. Fund is no problem, but the awareness we have a problem in Bangladesh. Because they don't realize, in our policymakers don't realize this is the heritage building. Because all the heritage building in our country, the custodian is the archaeological department. This is the offshoot of Indian Archaeological Survey. They have their specific way to look into the building. And with architect, they are archaeologists, they have a specific way, traditional way to look into the heritage building. My job is, or my presentation is how we will reimagine or how we will try to convince them, archaeologists or the archaeological department, this is adaptive reuse. But last 30 years, I am struggling only for identify the heritage building and to show the government this is the risk, this is the threat for heritage. And the organizer invited me for tomorrow's session. It was comfortable for me because I am as an activist or I am trying to convince people. But just 2-3 days back they requested me, no, I have to show some works also or how I think about the adaptive reuse. That's why I would like to show something. What is the traditional way of looking at adaptive reuse by the government institute and what is my vision. And this is the archaeology department of they have two ways of looking into works. Number one, they treat as a monument actually. All this is the Buddhist monument Vihara. This is all constructed between the 6th to 11th century, and this is the religious structure built in Sultanate before Mughal, and this is our Renaissance of Bengal, the Buddhist and then Islamic, early Islamic architecture, not the Mughal. And all this building is under use. Everybody is using this as religious space. Even the temples, they are under use actually. They are using for their ritual purpose. But we don't need any new adaptive reuse, insert new adaptive reuse. All this building is controlled by our archaeological department. And even the Mughal monuments is listed monuments, not 100%, 50% Mughal monuments is listed. And then 50% is not yet listed. Then what happens then? The information is increased, even the number of worshippers is increased. They need bigger space. They need bigger space for prayer. Then the first choice is to demolish the old mosque. This is the number one choice. And the second choice is they have respect to the heritage building, the local community, but surrounded by 5-story, 4-story buildings. So nobody can identify from outside that there was a Mughal building. This is the second option. And the last option, our government department, they made, because people want to have a prayer space. And the right side, you can see this is the original ruin, and they reconstructed with their own idea, or their own, reconstructed and dedicated and give it to the public for prayer purpose, praying purpose. And there's another way. They preserve the old building, they don't demolish the old building, but surrounded by verandas and balconies and everything, so nobody can identify the original. And this client, they requested me, because as I did my PhD in mosque architecture, then everyone thought I can design good mosque in the Mercer. But this is not right actually. I am working on the heritage building also. Then I try to convince them, please, it's a beautiful Mughal building, why don't you preserve it? We can design a new building beside this or in front of this. Then they agreed, and we started to remove the verandas. And this is after restoration, and this is the other side. Just remove the verandas, and then we can see the original. And one of our architects, I invited on a modern contemporary architect, he designed the new mosque, the new spaces for the public, just behind the old mosque. It means the old and new have a dialogue actually. In between there is a plaza. The plaza can be used for the Eid prayer or bigger spaces actually. And this is how we look from the new building without the old. And this is another example. This building is awarded UNESCO this year. This is another example. This top is the original one. Originally it was a one single dome mosque. Due to the requirement, they extended to a two-dome mosque. And later they added one veranda. That is, each building has a story of different phases. Then I've restored this building, and this is the new. And the case is different. The first one, our old one is in the front. Here is the old structure in the back. But in this building, I have a struggle with the client that this building I don't want to use as a prayer space. I want to dedicate for a Quran learning center or for maktab. They have a big space for prayer. It is difficult to convince the local community that a mosque cannot be used as a prayer space. Then now it is used as a training center, maktab, Quran training center for the children actually. This is the new adaptive reuse for this mosque. And this is my premise actually. There is a history of Bangladesh, the building that built during the colonial period. I should not say colonial building. This is the building built during the period. It's a little bit different than India. We have seen a lot of big building, mega building. I can differentiate two types of building built during the colonial period. One is religious structure, one is residential building, one is secular public building. All public buildings have been exactly similar or follow the style of European any style, either Victorian or Baroque or Rococo, any style. But the residential building, when this was built for the colonial ruler, this building is again exactly similar with England or colonial country. But in Bengal, we have different type of residential building, which is not colonial, which is Bengali, built during the colonial period. Why it was happened? I will say in a small thing. During the colonial period, there is a rule was established. It is called permanent settlement. Permanent settlement means the British ruler, they settle the tax, permanent, fixed tax, amount of tax. Whole Bengal was divided into several territories with jamindaris, talukdaris, and each and every talukdar have to pay fixed amount of tax. It means, for example, 1 lakh rupee they have to pay the tax. And then their jomidar turned into a brutal jamindar, feudal lord. They want to earn more money. Each and every year they want more money. Within a short span of time, they became so rich, huge amount of money on their hand. Because they have to pay only 1 lakh rupee for the British government, and the rest 4 lakhs, 5 lakhs, each and every year they increase their income. And then they started their building there for their own. They have their Bengali wife, it means they have the Bengali culture. It might happen that they have their English educated or dress is British, but from inside they are Bengali people. It means their Jamindar building from outside looks British, but from inside all are Bengali with courtyard, orientation, north-south orientation, even the sunbreaker, everything was neat for the colonial, for a tropical country. And whole Bangladesh is dotted with several Jamindar palaces. So my work is, our goal is to preserve or give adaptive reuse. Only adaptive reuse, it is familiar to the government, this is museum, museum and museum. When they find a building, they have to install a museum. Like this. There's no relation with this furniture, with that Jamindar. That's another example of a museum. Then not only the museum, they can change only the museum. And there's another building. Recently we have restored, this is the first colonial building in Dhaka city. We did it together. And this is also turned into a museum. Diorama, so, even a Mughal building, this is one building, audience hall is located in the Dhaka, this is a Lal Bagh fort. This is the only fort we have in our Dhaka city. And this is the Darbar hall or audience hall. They wanted to make it again a museum. What they did, the screen of all the first floor was a pavilion, the screen of the first floor to make the display. This is the carpet, this has nothing to do with the Mughals. To display the carpet, they close the first floor all with screen, cement screen. Then what I did, at first deplaster, because there is another tradition. All heritage building was plastered with cement. Then my first job is to deplaster. And then we have removed all the screens. Now it looks totally different. This is an ongoing project. We have to insert veranda even, and we want to display this building as pavilion. And originally we can see this building is a Mughal building, but Chinese porcelain ceramics will be displayed there. It was displayed there. Then I would like to remove this and bring back original functions. And all interior. And this is interesting on hammam. This hammam was during the Pakistan period, it was restored. And they open up a lot of openings. Then what I did, close all the openings and open up the original well. And the lighting condition, it was before restoration, light comes from the window, and you can see the same lighting condition with only a punch from the top. And I've restored this thing. This is ongoing project. And this is another building, it belongs to our president in his own residence. And another museum, new type of museum after 50 years or so. Every government, every organization wants to have an independent museum or museum for liberation. And he wants to make a museum for independence and liberation work, then I have to follow it. And this is the one small residence. Each, every village has such kind of tiny residences. It's a very broken, and after restoration, the family now own it and they can celebrate. It was the before and then after. And this building they want to use as a weekend house. Now this family is a bigger family, 4 or 5 families, and I dedicated one room from each family. They bring their own furniture, and that is there. And the last one is this building I have restored. Okay, first. This is a very big building. This building has 3 chronological, and the yellow one is the very old one, before 1550, and the left side, it was used for from the red one is the very old part, and the new part is the colonial part is the white one. And this is the old, I want to retain all the old elements as for display for architectural students or for architecture, the construction system. Even you can see the beautiful construction system made of brick. And really the thinking, because they want to make a museum. This building was left unused for last 5 years, 4 years, because their sponsor want to have an institute for conservation craftsmen, to train the craftsmen, but our government did not agree. They pressed me to make a museum. Then, okay, I accepted. But I want to make a new museum for the crafts process, not for the display of the. I've identified the type of crafts, and want to display the process. Okay. I want to display the process, not the product. But product I have to show not as an artifact, but is an installation. That these are the types of artifacts we have, products, and this is the process that I want to display all the process. Even the section, how the form, how the shape comes. This is metal work, and the process of the metal work I want to display in the museum. So the people have a knowledge. I can transfer the knowledge to the next generation. And this is the installation with all the metal things. And even the process of the carpentry, woodworks, all the joinery. Even in the left side, we want to show how the original plant was, and after doing the craftsman, how it was. And these are some examples for installation. Thank you all. Because
That is fascinating. The gamut of work that extends. You know, one of the big problem I really envy Bombay's buildings, because Bombay has got this stone structure, unlike in other parts like Calcutta or Dhaka, which has got more bricks, and its impact on the physiographic impact, the climatic impact are completely different. And Bombay's buildings are much more durable, therefore. And buildings by the side of the river to provide very high water table often do not. Now, I'm really looking forward to the presentation from Amar Vinod Kumar, and over to Vinod.
Thank you, Rajasthan Architecture Festival, for inviting me, and it's great to be here. So we are talking of readaptive future. I think we also, as architects, need to talk about how much harm architects are doing, because for 40% of whatever climate change is because of construction, and a lot of materials we use, I think concrete, steel, they are not that carbon friendly. So I think we need to readapt ourselves, the way we work, and that's very important. And perhaps in a country like India, the amount of conservation architects working is far, far less. We've got the elite people here, but yes, I think there could be 100 times more work and people working on conservation projects, and there are projects all over, but I think we have dearth of people doing work. And I don't think money is also a problem. We have money and work, but there could be much more people doing work. And we work from Thrissur, which is a town in Kerala, also known as the cultural capital of Kerala. And you might have seen the Puram festival with a lot of elephants that happens in our town. And let's go to the next slide. And here, just a slide showing city as a material bank. It's not just for a city, it can be any village or even households in Kerala earlier. All the materials used to come from the household or the compound. We used to take laterite from there, build from there, and then we used to have local workers. So even if it's a very small village, everything used to be within the city or the village. I think that's something which we don't have much today, because I would say it's easier to get a multinational product than a local indigenous person coming to us. It's also because maybe for the indigenous or the local, we don't have that kind of a marketing or the organized network which most global corporations have. So I think that's again an area where we architects need to put in effort, try to bring up the local people, the craftsmen and all the others who work with us. And this is just, okay, some of these things which other speakers have also spoke about. Okay, when we use, what are the technologies available, how easy is it to get, and is it organized to really do such things? I think these are things which we need to work out. And this is our office in Trichy. It's called VD Architects, and for the past 20 years we've been redoing, adding spaces, trying out, exploring things, exploring materials, lime, bauxite, wood, bamboo, all these materials, and I think that's the biggest laboratory for us. It's not a huge office, but we've been exploring every material, every craftsman, and that's where we learn from, and we try to implement many of that in our projects. These are some of the interior spaces. So we've used everything around. We used mud from the compound, we used wood in the old structure. It was a 1920 old wooden hut, or just like a backdrop, a small wood hut, which we have changed and reworked it. Sorry, I don't have the old photo, we're trying to search for it. And so we just use the same space, same walls, and then rework the whole thing to bring something new. And all these materials are there: lime, terracotta, mud, bamboo, wood. It's all mostly original materials. And this is one of our earliest projects, work from 2003 to 2005. It's the old palace in Thrissur. It's called Shaktantambaran Palace. Shaktantambaran is the founder of Thrissur. He's a very bold ruler from 1790 to 1805 was his time. And this palace was on a court case, and the family didn't want to leave it, and finally government took over the palace in around 1990s. And then archaeological department was confused what to do, and finally we gave a proposal to have a heritage garden in the whole compound. It was a king's palace, not in a great shape, and even the palace is converted to a museum. So these are some of the old and new images. This is the old space where literally they were confused what to do, and it's a very important project for us because if you see the whole compound, within the 3 years we've added around 500 trees, and the concept was to have a forest within the city, and the entire space has changed, and we've restored the entire compound, and we can do heritage walks there. There's a bamboo, there's an archaeological garden, whole lot of things happening there. So it's in the center of the city, a 6-acre, 8-acre compound, otherwise which could have easily gone to any developer, or it could have been something else. So it was somehow the people came together, we could do it that time. And this is something very next to the palace. It's a pond. Kerala, you all might have seen the old ponds where people take bath and village ponds. So, but in a city that doesn't happen anymore because people all take bath in their houses. So going to a public pond and taking bath doesn't happen. So in the last 40-50 years, it was in a very bad shape. So it's just next to the palace. And then in 2007, just after the palace project, that was the shape when we got in there. It was all filled and in a bad shape. So then we could restore it into an urban edge park, water edge park, where people can come spend their evenings. There are a lot of birds coming there. There are migratory birds. So we gave a new meaning to the traditional space, using local materials, using local laborers, and that's how we work there. And this is again a similar project, which is the old waterway of Thrissur called Vanjikulam, from which we had boats going to Kochi, Trivandrum, and all these places. And in the last 60 years, just like the pond, people stopped using boats for this transportation. Since the trains came, the lorries came, so boats stopped happening. Although Kerala has a fantastic network of water channels, mostly built during the British colonial times, now government is doing projects to revive them. So this is part of that project also. So it's in the town. We are trying to restore the whole thing into an urban space. So it's happening now, it's ongoing, with also some support from the tourism and the corporation, where we are reviving the entire space and giving a new urban meaning also, so that it becomes a new urban center within the city. Keeping the old things where maybe it's not used for transportation anymore, it could be used for tourists and can have other purposes also. And this is one project where we have the heritage guest house of Thrissur. It's called Ramanilayam, and it's a very prestigious space. Within Kerala, Ramanilayam is one of the best guest houses owned by the tourism department. And a lot of leaders, prime ministers, presidents have stayed here. But for the past 10-15 years, it was, I would say, badly managed or not well managed by the department or the government. And then it was in a bad shape. So we had to restore it, document it, do it piece by piece. And it's done with the help of PWD engineers and local contractors. So we are proud of it. So without any external help, with the local people, we could get it done. And this is during the work, and it's after it got done. some of the corridors, and although it's a PWD work, I can surely say, maybe to Nimrana, sir, that it's possibly as good as any modern heritage hotel. Yeah. So, we are very proud that it's done purely with government work, by government engineers and PWD staff, and we could achieve something. And about this place, you can see before we did it, they had put vinyl flooring over timber and gypsum roof below the original timber roof. There's a whole lot of work which we had to do and bring it back to this kind of shape. And this is one house we had done for a friend, photographer friend, for 10 lakhs, using all recycled materials. We had materials from an old factory, tile factory, so the bricks and the roof tiles, the oxide flooring, everything we've used with local materials, recycled materials, and it's 1,000 square feet structure for a friend within 10 lakhs. So again, these things are possible today, but means a lot of work from architect's side, each day at the site and each side. And this is some of the interior photographs. And again, windows which are recycled, old windows, we had to go to the wooden dealers, antique dealers, get the thing and rework on it. It's again a lot of work, but it gives the results. And that's his father sitting there. And this is our own home, where this is the old and this is the new. And this again, it needs a lot of work, but piece by piece we could restore it. And again, using all the old materials, all the old craftsmanship, and whatever wood you can see as screen there, it's all from the old wooden beams on top. So we could bring it back to a new life could be given to it, and intact Trishul right now works on top there near on the top floor. We could add a studio, all these things. And this is one of the projects which we've been working for the past 15 years. It's a temple restoration project in Trishul. And it's one of the largest temples in Kerala. It's in the center of the town. And right now we are also working on the Maidan, which is around the temple. The project hasn't been started, or we haven't got funds yet, but we hope to get it sometime. And we've been working on it, and this is the different stages of conservation that have been happening. And for a temple like this, which is more than 1,000 years old, the restoration is something which happens every 100 years. Like it's called Punarudharanam in Kerala. So every 100 years they add new energy, new meaning, not new spaces essentially, but the meaning of the space change. And there's a lot of new things which come up. So I think that's very important for a 1,000-year-old plus temple every 100 years. So we could get from whatever clues we got that the last restoration, major restoration happened in 1880s or 1890s. So when we did it now, perhaps it stays for another 100 years. We hope so, if things are not damaged. And so even for the Maidan, that whole thing is 65 acres. And we've done the tree mapping, and we are working what to do with the water, so that we have something very sustainable for the future. Water, waste, all these things, you know. And I think that way, every space needs to relive.
Very openly. So you design the hospital and you need to listen to the nurses and the doctors and the different kinds of doctors, etc. Would you say that that is a democratic way of working, where you very intensely listen and then you come up with your autocratic response? So just the democracy is for a moment, the moment when we are open or when we are looking for suggestions. So would that fit?
That's a very intelligent question. Sanjeev has been talking of me being within the Seva, but I never knew how to bat. I was a fast bowler in my younger days. But see, we are talking of two things now. We are talking of two things here. We are talking of the user, the end user that you are, consulting with, taking their opinions. You are talking of, the end users being a part of the design, being involved in the process of design, and then you are, so-called autocratic ways come in. But what we're talking of, what I am talking of, democracy in architecture as a wider base, as a principle, wherein we, as a policy as well, wherein we are talking of something where the end user is not a restricted group. We're talking of end users as an entire country, as an entire community, as an entire world, if I should say. That is what we're talking of democracy in architecture. That is what I meant when I talk about. I also do intense consultation with my end users. I do intense consultation with my workmen, craftsmen who are working on my projects. I also do intense consultation with my own people in my own office. And then we come out with a design. So that's perfectly fine. That's a process of design that we all do. But what we're talking here is of democracy, where we have unhindered, unrestricted access, and we are talking in the realm of the common good that we all believe in. And that is what I think is democracy now.
Yeah. That was a great opening question and a great opening answer. Other questions, please? A couple of hands there.
Hello, Sanjeev, I am Sanjeev. So, my question again is to the flamboyant opening batsman. So, Habeeb Khan Sehwag, please answer this. You said that in England you were asked to display your drawings, and then in India none such thing happened. So, what as a council, I'll use you as a council now. So, what are your ideas about how we should implement that India also stands in the same footing?
First of all, it becomes democratic when the decision makers of the government involves public in the process of their policies and the process of their decisions. And that is what I meant when I said when we do a project in England where the community and the surrounding areas were invited to give an opinion on the project that you were displaying or you were building. That never happens in our municipal corporations, development authorities, or any statutory authority in our country. And to be very honest, as a council president and the Council of Architecture can do nothing about it, because this is not the mandate of the council, it is outside the mandate of the council. So it is the decision of a state government or the central government, and it's a policy decision in which COA does not play any role.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Architect from Telangana. Being from Hyderabad, Habeeb sir, to begin with, I quite disagree with the whole concept of democracy in architecture or the other way around. I just want to give an example of one of the projects in Hyderabad, in Venice, that is the pedestrianization of Tamina. So this has been a project for the last 20 years. It was designed and taken up.
So would you like to state the question, please?
Honestly, I just wanted to use this example.
Then that's a fantastic lunch conversation. Can we have the next question? You are next. Thank you.
This is for Lalichan. No, I was curious, and I would have liked to see at the first preliminary sketch, the first conceptual sketch that you showed to the parishioners and the end product. How much was the difference between what you conceptualized in the beginning and what happened in the end?
Actually, not much, to be frank. Hear me out. See, but actually, for the detailing or placing the ramp, the access to different areas.
But that sometimes a single client can also give you.
I didn't say that they can't be here. I see the advantage of this discussion is everybody owns up the design. See, they will see that is the advantage when you do it. It's not like any other plan.
Definitely the people feel a sense of involvement.
That is exactly when you say about that. See, at the end of the day, you are the architect, and it is what you design, and that should be coming. But you have to take along the public with us.
Yes, Sanjeev sir, I am architect Shirish from Airport, and the question goes to Sanjeev sir. मैं थोड़ा confused हो गया हूँ after discussing all this. Empathy or democracy? What is the line, or do we have a line? So I think if you can explain.
You know, so I have a choice at this point. I would say it's a lunch conversation, right? Because, as I said, the moderator has the privilege of not taking a stand and not answering a question, right? The question is for the fellow panelists. So let's do it over lunch. Do we have? Yes. We see a hand.
Good afternoon. My name is Pooja Bansal. I'm an architect from Jaipur. And my question is to the panel only. When we were seeing the presentations, we're talking about public buildings when we're talking about democracy. What about the buildings which are not public? Let's say for a resort, which is coming up close to a village. How do we perceive democracy there? The end user is not the people who are living around that plot. How do we perceive the importance or the input in that context, in the democratic concept?
Good question. Thank you. Who wants to bat?
So you saw my second slide. I said what you give back to the community of the society. So we will find many presentations when we witness key presentations abroad. They count a small portion of their compact block. You know, when you work somewhere like in New York, carving out a 300 square feet of a piece is a big deal. So they carve out that and they give it back to the community. And they make a very nice public realm space which is open for people. And they give that feeling, you will see all those buildings, they have a feeling where the lobby is not restricted to certain people. You know, it's open for everyone. So that kind of architecture is actually needed.
I'll add to your answer to that question. If you remember, you were not looking at my flamboyant presence, like someone just said. This slide said there are two domains that we work with. One is public domain and the other is private domain. When it comes to private domain, there is no democracy. We cannot discuss democracy in architecture when it comes to private domain. A resort, a house is your own private domain. It's not in the realm of the public domain. So that question doesn't arise at all when it comes to private domain.
Can I add that? Can I add something?
That would be a
to my heart, and I grew up in Bombay, so my God, Abha, many congratulations. And I know what's been going on in Bombay, but unfortunately, you have a lot of friends, part of your Kala Ghoda, like Tiny and Linda, I know a lot, but great work. And Aman is a friend and fantastic at each one of you. But why can't we have, since all of you are doing such great work in each city, and you're quite influential and very well respected in your cities and in the country, try and get a policy in place with the government of India. I think that is most important, that every city or every state should not, no building should be destroyed. I know how many have been destroyed in our own city, and it breaks my heart. And in fact, with the ministers who are very much worked with the heritage, I would like to name anybody, but it all comes to, and I don't understand how they can't be convinced that we are not going to be live forever, but the city is going to live forever.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Does it work here?
Hello?
Thank you. I just wanted to say one thing. We need to start with the fact that even in cities and states, many don't have urban policies. We still have only monument protection policies. Rajasthan very recently did not have a town and country planning act on which to enable things like conserving Shekhavati and such areas. So we don't think in terms of an urban neighborhood. And secondly, in terms of percentages, you know that Rajasthan government has a cap of 2% for any architectural work. Now why on earth, if you pay monkey, you will get peanuts, and that's the beginning of the whole mess.
But that's where you all need to kind of... That's where you all need to... I think we all need
More questions? Please, I think we should continue. I need so many other questions. Go ahead. Yeah?
Well, it was very good to see that it was not Shah Jahan's Taj Mahal being rejected, but I think common man's Taj Mahal, everybody
looked at. I was only wondering, with such kind of an effort, two options have come out. One is a step-by-step documentation both of techniques of restoring and stuff like that from diverse contexts and can be shared with the fraternity and students. And the other one being sort of a similar thing, but guideline or training for the artisans, because that's something as is fully part of the heritage that we need, so that it's a spin-off that goes on with or without us or larger publics.
Yeah. Any specific questions? Yes.
I think Mr. Saeed pointed out that most of the imagination of restoring old buildings is usually, my voice is very loud, and the only imagination is converted to a museum. Right? And whereas Aman pointed out that, Aman shows that can be, now I come from Bangalore and I've been pushing for a project like what Abba has been talking about. I wrote the Heritage Act for the city, I put it into the legislature, nothing happened, 20 years, I've been struggling. And finally I said there's no point running after an act. There is one road in my city which has 36 heritage buildings of more than 100 years old. And 80% of them belong to government. Now, one of the things maybe this panel can tell us is what else to do other than museums? What else? I mean, they will not give it to a hotel.
You can't change the aspirations of it. People want to live like.
Yeah, but we don't want 36 museums either.
I know. We did Villa Potipati in Malleshwaram, but eventually it went, because 90 crores you get for selling your plot. Well, you're never going to get 90 crores from an 8-room hotel,
I understand.
No, but I think the basic problem which we cannot fight is the aspirations of the people. Look how the rich in India want to live. The houses look like London and Paris and Rome. Why are we having Beverly Hills in Delhi? Hello.
No, but that's not the point. I'm saying all 36 buildings belong to the government of India, government of Karnataka. I'm saying that maybe if you could share what else to do with it.
Retail. We have Zara in a heritage building. There's Gallery Lafayette.
What else? Go on. I think 36 units.
Restaurants, retail, bookstores, cafes.
Why don't you make it a project?
How can you make it like heritage as a public movement rather than, let to few institutional or other thing? I think it's better to take heritage back to the people and let people come as a partner. So in fact, it's becoming either a government agenda or, few kind of enlightened institution. But it has never been a public agenda. So I think it has to be public led and where, what are the options available for making it as a public led movement. That's what it is.
Question.
And
I converted one building into the...
One thing I would like to add, we talk about the heritage. I don't think about 90 to 95% of the heritage is identified. Unfortunately, it's because of few people, that we are getting, what heritage is. But otherwise, in case of heritage in education, even in architecture education, this remains an peripheral subject. Why can't heritage be taught as an integral part of the education so that all professionals get involved in it to the job? That's what we are doing.
Yeah, I think that's very valid. And, can I take your question? Can you ask your question?
Yeah, I'm Anupam Mittal. I'm from Lucknow. Recently, just last 15 days back, we have submitted our city development plan to the capital city of Lucknow, and this was a very major part of this thing, heritage. So the way we have done, if the same thing can be taken care of other cities, like this chapter of heritage and tourism as a complete chapter has been submitted, where we have taken all the buildings of the city under the development for the city users in a different manner, maybe from the museum to everything, and everything is getting underutilized, like utilization from the underutilized places. So if the same thing can be taken to the other places or cities, and definitely.
But I like to add, right from 1970, I'm in the planning profession right from 1969, is not ordinary. But let me tell you, master plans have not addressed the issue.
Yes.
Yes,
You
I
know, that
completely
is,
agree.
you know, this is what.
Yeah, we will continue this discussion
I
because
have done about
it's
each
been going on since last 40 some days.
Why can't have master plan, each master plan dedicated chapter to,
Yeah.
you know, heritage? And
True.
unfortunately, whatever the heritage has been done.
Yeah.
is
Sir, your point is
defined.
well taken.
It's
And we
different.
will-
Only
yeah.
one thing, that topic, the chapter is done by people who are, you know, don't understand the
Yes,
heritage.
yes,
That's what we
yes. Any other question? Lots. Can all the questions be kind of shooted very quickly?
Hello. I hail from Jaipur itself. I had a question that there is a small place, small town known as Rajgarh, just before entering Alwar. One of the projects was shown near Alwar. So I wanted to ask, there are many ruined structures, old heritage structures, which are not being restored or, you know, not being taken into
Question.
So I wanted to ask this, in Jaipur we are restoring and making reuse of old buildings again and again, putting work and efforts in those buildings which are already been restored quite enough times. So how do you get the people to, you know, notice those old structures, because there are many
How do you get people, right? Any question? Any more?
I have a question.
1, 2, 3.
We have seen many buildings beautifully restored. I wanted to ask a question because you know, since Abba said that it is claiming back by the city, so this also needs to be very inclusive from the perspective of all the users using it. So I mean, how do you deal with this issue of access to the disabled people with disability? Did you consider this?
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Yes. Quick one.
So there are a lot of Havelis in Jaipur that are partly old, built during 80s and 1800s and 1700s, and now over time they've been built on top since 1980s, 1960s in concrete. So how does one approach doing restoration of this kind of project? Do we only restore the part that was old in heritage, or do we also take the same aesthetic and put it on the part that was built in the modern era?
Right.
So there's something that I would like to know.
Right.
Depend what the end user says here.
Right. Any more? Yes. Would you take on one by
So answering your question, depends what the end use is. You can't just be purist and knock down everything that's been added. But if it can be made harmonious and it works, it's okay. It's intuitive also. You can't have a hard and bound rule for that. But if you're turning it into a purist building, then you have to knock all the additions. Otherwise, you wouldn't.
Would you like to add? Because I think one has to make a judicious trade-off between, while removing the later addition, if you are in the process losing the significance with which you have started the building, right? You have to make that trade-off sometime, right? And you have to bank on some of the very established rules and principles of conservation. And that is what I feel is very important, because there are lots of architectural firms which are doing restoration in this country today, or from all over the world. And I was horrified to see a restoration in the name of restoration as well, where artifacts are used as displays, right? Including the Reichstag Museum, where Norman Foster is used as a display in front of the lift lobby, right? I think that is very important for doing that trade-off and giving respect to the significance for the building that you are attending to, right? You're not compromising. If you're compromising significance, you're actually pushing the building towards a fakeness, right? So that is very, very critical. And here, I would like to ask very celebrated who only does architecture, and architecture is always about creativity, and conservation is not so creative. Would you have some answers to that? I mean, can we discuss that as well? Because essentially it's an architectural crowd that we are gathered here today, and I don't want to really get into the deep understanding which will be addressed in the NEP session, I'm sure, which is coming in the next session.
But does architect also really think conservation is creative?
Thank you all for your presentations. I think within 40 minutes we've seen more than, it should be a seminar by itself. I really feel that there's so much work that has been done by all of you, so really thank you. And I would like to arrange that we get them all to Dhaka in Bangladesh and have really a good seminar where we learn also the way this can be done, because I know that we really immensely need this awareness. I think it's a very interesting debate that you bring up. So I feel, we've also addressed some of these buildings where it may not be of high value in terms of preservation. So I think there is a category in many ways, like the buildings, also the one that you're addressing, how much historical value it is in terms of architectural and craftsman-wise, and also historical values. So all these different values, if you go through the entire spectrum, and then you can decide which needs to be preserved as like a museum, or which can be used as an adaptive reuse, repurposing, giving it a second life or third life, and how far. I think that balance needs to be decided based on the building and the entire history of the building, of its construction, its use, everything. So we have addressed a few buildings where we also had to do some addition and connectivity. So in many ways we've also added with the old building a new sort of plug-in to bring a new value, or let's say to kind of bring a repurposed ideology, or even I would say give a new life to it, a second life in a way.
Actually work exactly in that field. I feel that the question is very interesting. But if you were to make a Taj Mahal into a hotel, it would be a sin.
Yeah.
But if you look at Nimrana, it was such a ruin. So you can't say we restored it. Now there's no loom. You have to go out, walk, 500 meters, and sit on the rampart. There's a hole where the soldiers did. So if you're making bathrooms and air conditioning and all this, so it is restoration for reuse. It has to be creative. It has to be jugaad, as we say, and inventive. But then, when you look at the old parts, it's done in line and so on, you shouldn't see huge pierced windows with glass and views. So we addressed that problem. In Rajasthan, we have 3 layers of windows. Outside there's an old wooden window, as there would have been, and inside the depth of the wall there's a window which is a glass, which is a gauze window, and there are shutters of glass. So if you want breeze, then you open the first window, then you open the second window. So it has to be creative, otherwise you can't live there.
Yeah, so I think it's also a decision by the architect who's working on it. I just have one question before I end this, that what do we do about the modern heritage? We talked about a lot of other things, but what about the modern heritage that we have? And in Bangladesh, I know that we've had lots of issues, a lot of buildings which constantly it has to be taken down, made it a 20-story building and all that. And we go into the streets and, like activists. But why should that be the case?
I think, Marlena, that's such a valid, and I think especially in an architecture festival, if you look at 1935, Siam was set up with Charles, Corbusier as one of the members, and that sort of led the way for the conservation charters. But the question is, what happens to 20th century heritage today, and how do we make sure we're able to protect it? I prepared the management plan for Corbusier's Chandigarh Capitol Complex, and yet when the management plan went into operationalization, I had to fight with the CPWD engineers saying, you've got to change the air conditioning system, not to cut the tapestries of Corbusier. And the fellow said, no, we just put money last year in doing the new AC system, so we won't do it. My point being, the concept of 20th century architecture being imported has still not come down even at a World Heritage Site level. So maybe one of the reasons I worked on nominating the Art Deco buildings of Mumbai to UNESCO was, had we not had it as a UNESCO site, in the real estate scenario, these would have all gone. They were not individually listed. So we are currently working with Sri Lanka to create a nomination dossier for Jeffrey Baba's, his legacy. I think Bangladesh needs to do the same with your modern heritage, and especially in South Asia, where we have such an intense urban implosion, really, I think it becomes really, really critical for India, Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh to really come up with maybe a kind of a 20th century platform where we can begin to have a dialogue on this.
So I think
Okay. I would like to share one good news with Marina Tabassu regarding the modern heritage. Last 1.5 years, we tried a lot to include 2 buildings in World Heritage List from Bangladesh. One is Parliament building, one is the MODERATOR building. Fortunately, these 2 buildings is listed as a tentative list in the World Heritage List. It's a good advancement for our country. Now we have to prepare the dossier for the second layer.
I think we have to close it down, and there are so many other people I can see we can go on discussing. So many.
Now, what I want to drive it here is, I would like to say a quote, a saying by Nani Palkiwala when he says, I agree with Nani Palkiwala when he says that we seem to be living in a society that is suffering from the fatty degeneration of our conscience. Just listen to this very beautifully. We are suffering from the fatty degeneration of our conscience, where our single-minded pursuit of money is impoverishing our mind, shriveling our imagination, and desiccating our hearts. So this is what happened. This was my farmhouse at another conference, and I sold it to a friend, and unfortunately that friend died after a few years, and his son has taken over, and see what this place has become now. I was shocked, I was heartbroken when I visited this place just 2 months back. This was the place earlier with those existing trees and the house smothered inside the trees. And this son, who is only interested in money, he has cut those trees, sold the trees just for a few lakhs, which would last him only for a few months, 2-3 months. This is what happens when there is no empathy. And when our basic priority in life is the single-minded pursuit of money. This is what it was earlier.
And that's why this is a market that the world eyes with fascination. The economy is booming. Construction is going on at a rapid pace all over the country. And infrastructural development is one area that is getting all-round emphasis. As per the estimates of the World Bank, India's economic growth is expected to rise to 7.5% this year, and growth rate may reach to double digit in the near future. All this makes for a huge potential, and the opportunity is now. These statistics and opportunities are at macro level, but on micro level, how an individual manufacturer, investor, trader or an entrepreneur can enjoy the fruits of this larger economic scenario, that is an important and crucial question. To convert the hidden opportunities in real terms and establish an easy path for establishing operations in India, you need a local partner with strength and local expertise, whom you can trust, who dreams your dreams, thrives when you succeed, and provides you with an opportunity to move ahead. And the simple answer to this question is
Florex's journey of 20 years of international trade and dealing with buyers and suppliers of the world enabled us to gather a significant amount of expertise in international trade, especially for traders and construction projects, including hotels, township, educational institutes, theme parks, high-end residential villas, and many more. This exposure of working with world-class suppliers major developers and designers gave us the sense to understand not only the needs and expectations of manufacturers, traders, project owners, and consultants or designers, but also their day-to-day challenges. This distinctive combination of vast experience, global contacts, networking, and strong hold on cross-border logistic management gave us the courage and vision to initiate the revolutionary phygital format of one-stop solution of building material and home decor projects and cross-border trade solution. Through this,
it becomes effective. On some projects, we have not imported a single stone from outside. All stones that we have used in the building or from the road or from the compound wall were obtained on the site itself. This is the house I live in outside the outskirts of the city, where we have not bought a new tile, we have not bought a new stone, we have not steel. Everything is brought from the scrap market or from the demolished buildings. So that reduces my embodied energy and makes the house more sustainable. See, these are broken tiles which I got from nothing, from the tile market. This is beta gold, natural tile. The ceiling is made from packaging wood. The gate and the fencing is made from broken pieces of, waste pieces of tall steel, which you find on any site. Not a single Mangalore tile is new. Then old windows and doors have been used. Even the steel for the reinforcement is bought from the scrap market. The structural steel is also bought from the scrap market. Then we are self-sufficient in terms of drinking water. We don't use drink a single glass of corporation water. We have heating, we have solar electric generation, we have a large rainwater harvesting tank for domestic water. Or even adaptive reuse. I think the palace station was on that. We converted this old palace to put into a hotel. So adaptive reuse is also a sustainable way of doing things. And we also preserve that heritage. So instead of creating spaces that tend to separate, divide, and fragment, can we have spaces that unify, integrate, and empathize visually, physically, and psychologically? Like, look at this. We're talking about equity. No, I'm sorry, I went under the wrong this thing. Instead of being expressions of human exploitation, social injustice, and iniquity, can our spaces become expressions of our empathy for the less privileged people as well as our environment? Look at this, 13 floors meant for the car, and the guy across the street sleeps like this. We went to a school near Kolhapur in a remote area where these were the boys' toilets, and the girls didn't have any toilets at all. So we decided to design and build the toilet from them, entirely from our own cost, and see how happy the kids are. The girls' toilets are being cleaned by the boys because they're happy to have these toilets. Or there was a neglected space near my house somewhere, and which was used for antisocial things. Under that water tank, it was all dilapidated. So we converted that into a more usable public space, which is open, democratic. Or many places, there are many areas where we find there are barren lands. So we do a lot of afforestation there, above also and below. Or we also done some work, designing work for the people who have suffered in the floods or in the COVID. So we've done this housing for the flood affected people. So how to bring about empathy is very easy also, is that you have to just cut on the dotted line and turn it 180 degrees. So the me-centric concept becomes we-centric, So we work together.
We all know that this beautiful fort of Amer, of course, has fantastic passive design strategies, which includes various elements such as hydraulic engineering, architectural integration, and detailed urban planning. We can see that specifically when it is completely elaborated in the underground chambers where multiple passive strategies design elements can be found located as wind tunnels, water walls, ponds, cisterns, thermal mass, and this is all done 400 years back. So we have to really understand why we have not brought this into our regular projects. Central air can allow for high degree of climate control, and many can have their condensers located outside, which may cause severe damage to the structure appearance. We just now seeing what Chandigarh experience of Ms. Abha, I think she narrated her experience, and this could be a very big challenge. So adopting modern mechanical system to historical building will need careful planning and coordination. We have done some small duct systems offer a better solution. This is a special system which is now currently available in the globe, where we use 2 inches flexible tubes, and this can be integrated with VRF system also, and it can be integrated with the chilled water system also. I'll be showing you some good case studies of this. So no matter what type of HVAC system for historic building is selected, it should meet ease of service and maintenance, inclusion of humidity monitors and safety systems to protect collection, installed with future upgrades in mind, installed with structural limitation of the building and minimum level of vibration and noise, and visual compatibility with the original architecture. Small duct high velocity system are very efficient, and I will once again take you through on one of the case studies, but this is the Darbar Hall of Udaipur Palace, where we have penetrated 48 inches wall with this system, and it is working now for last 11 years successfully. The larger air handling units will always have challenges, but what is now happening is to overcome these challenges, now mobile and wireless technologies are becoming very common in field of heritage building. Today, smart innovative solutions for historical building ranging from lighting to security to fire systems are easily available in the market. Smart security integrates features like access control, CCTV, alarms, panic buttons into one easy use system. In recent decade, wireless sensor networks, we call it WSNs, and Internet of Things techniques are broadly utilized in cultural heritage protection oriented networks or for monitoring the environment, security improvement issues. The wireless sensor network is a monitoring system comprises of radio equipped nodes linked to suitable sensors. These radio frequencies are now determined by government regulations, but they are permitted, and the sensors capable of monitoring crucial parameters like temperature, humidity, masonry cracks, pouring rain, and usual light for heritage building protection. So a lot of things can happen with these smart systems. A WSN comprises a set of intelligent nodes and each equipment with a radio transducer for wireless communication, and ultra-low power microcontroller for data reprocessing, and flash memory to store the data. So the nodes automatically connect to each other through wireless link to enabling distributed data processing and remote data transmission. On the fire side, the wireless fire devices have become very highly specified solution for heritage building, overcoming most of the challenges and pitfalls that these complex structures can prevent to fire systems, specifiers and installers. A wireless system can be installed in hours, and devices can be easily moved to or updated in future, allowing system to be expanded, modified or upgraded as building use evolves and technology develops. There is no complexity and structural impact of running wiring loops for installers, less disruption of visitors attraction, reduced cost and less need for intervention in the historic fabric of the building. More and more these buildings are in operations in year-round, so wireless is the best choice to deliver an effective optimal fire system. We now have a smart lighting solutions available. The beauty of wireless lighting is that it involves minimal installation, often utilizing existing sockets, and it is controlled remotely via smartphones or tablet. It does not require any concealed wiring. Also, the walls and ceilings of heritage buildings remain untouched, and lighting can be positioned wherever necessary throughout the space. Wireless lighting also offers significant cost-saving benefits, reducing waste energy by 50%. This advancement is going to happen further because there is a huge advancement happening in battery technology and LED lighting, which means wireless systems can run for many years without even battery change. The passive technologies take advantage of local environment to maximize the comfort while minimizing the energy use and adverse impacts. So the passive design principles should be developed and integrated with the current advanced technology to overcome the challenges. We have some fantastic examples which India has. India's largest passive controlled building is operational for last 14 years with the energy consumption of 1/9. This is something which Ahmedabad has for Torrent Research Center. We are working on a largest net positive campus of the country at Nalanda with architect D.V. Doshi's office, and here we have also adopted several such technologies. So we have adopted modern technologies and blended with traditional wisdom of architecture which we have learned in India. So here we are using all the aspects of modern technology. Friends, I was fortunate to work with this Fateh Prakash Palace, the Heritage Hotel at Udaipur. This is one of the most beautiful sites I have done any project. We have been fortunate to get global awards for this project because this was the first project in the world where we used digital technology in terms of ERVs with very innovative high velocity duct system. The Fateh Prakash, so this was the presentation which we had done in detail. I don't want to get into it, but what we have tried to do is remove the current condensers which were lying in the veranda, which was overlooking the palace. You can see this beautiful palace which is from the side of Lake Palace. So this Fateh Prakash Palace Hotel has been certified as Best Heritage Hotel in Heritage Grand category by the Department of Tourism. And what we have done here is we have taken out from those corridors which you see here and taken outdoor units to the other building. With the result, the owners could get 6 rooms overlooking the palace. And these are the best rooms of Udaipur, I personally feel. They have been fantastically done, and entire advantage came because we could remove this to 300 meters away from the current location. And we were fortunate to get some tunnels which were connecting the two palaces, and this was very effectively done here. This was the Darbar Hall. Again here, we did not touch the current old heritage structure and integrated a Vidyarthi system along with specially designed for this architectural framework, special units which were probably nobody can even visualize where the unit is being located. So this was all possible because of good working with architects. You can see here this was a corridor on which old condensers were lying, and they were converted to a luxurious rooms there. This is how the piping was moved, and we took the units almost 300 meters away. You can see here the 2-inch ducts were integrated with the architecture, and you can't see them. Also the outdoor units which are seen on the terrace were beautifully covered. Of course, our entire opening sizes and everything was designed by us, and architect did respected that, but you can't see those condensing units from anywhere. So this was something fantastic application which we worked out. There were many challenges in the kitchens. Of course, these were resolved with floor raising, but this is one of the largest challenge which building, if it is not used for, made for that, and particularly in heritage position, this can have a lot of challenges. So this is a second job which I will like to showcase here. This is done in your city of Jaipur. I was fortunate to work with Habeeb, he is architect here from Rambagh. This is Rambagh Palace. So Rambagh Palace is most glorious of palaces, with its elaborate splendor, extravagantly decorated hand-carved marble, jalis, sandstone balustrades and cupolas and chhatris to complement the magnificent rooms and elaborate Mughal gardens. A fantastic project is this, and this is a banquet hall which is recently completed. You can see our air conditioning grills are not conventional; they have been integrated with the interior. And the services was a big challenge here because they were not to be seen, so we have created a complete underground tunnel to take all engineering services, and at spots wherever services were required, we came up. This is a beautiful tunnel work which has happened with all smoke, ventilation and everything taken care. And this is how you can see the structure, because nothing was to be seen from the outside road. And how we have done the ducting integration is very interesting because we had very limited space for ducting, and the grills were very specific shapes. So you can see multiple levels of ducting happening there, but it was very nicely integrated. And this is one of the most challenging job which we have done in our life, and the result is very, very heartening, and you can of course go and see this when you are here. There were large utilities which were taken care in terms of air conditioning plants, in terms of our plant rooms. All that integration happened. This is something which is just done. This hotel is just commercially starting in the city of Jaipur. This is a Regency Hotel which is just completed, and the beauty of this is of course blending of all your heritage designs. And here again the services was very challenging because of the nature of work which was demanded by interior designers and architects and the higher chain. But you can see here again entire heritage architecture was blended with our engineering services. So this is just finished work. One of the recent openings in Jaipur. You can see here, of course, we didn't get a tunnel here, but we used terraces. You can't see any services anywhere from the outside areas. So that is, and it has big services because it is a pretty large size air conditioning system. So friends, I am here in Jaipur as ASSOCHAM chairman. So ASSOCHAM has taken a green initiative to take care of Mother Earth and to complement India's sustainability movement, and they have formed this Council of Green and Eco-Friendly Movement. We call it CJAM, that executes JAM Sustainability Program. And JAM has 5 ratings starting from 0 to 105 above is our JAM 5 certification. We use a yard scale of 0 to 135. And JAM is becoming very popular because it is very reasonable, and our JAM certified building will give you a payback of maximum 3 to 4 years. We are now present across the country, and we have 2,000 plus professionals helping us for this. I'm very glad that ASSOCHAM JAM Green Building Certification Program has been impaneled with Rajasthan Building Bylaws 2020, and free extra FAR incentives on green buildings are available. It is also heartening that Maharashtra government has also given similar notification recently. Also, Kerala has done this fantastic work, and ASSOCHAM JAM Green Building Certification Program is now empaneled in Government of Kerala. Also, Delhi government state level expert appraisal committee is insisting for ASSOCHAM JAM. So I think we are started getting good recognition. I'm very glad to put on records that recently completed 2 new stations at Habeeb, which is now Rani Repurposing station, and also Ahmedabad Gandhinagar station is certified by Gen 5. This is a luxurious hotel standing above the Leela Hotel. There are many projects which have come forward. Sir is here. His corridor at Kartarpur Sahib is also Gen certified. We are very glad that we have now signed 93 MOUs with several universities, and our dream and passion is that we should teach our architectural students about sustainability. So these are 93 institutes and universities with whom we have been working on Gen Sustainability program. So friends, let's lead and create a green, environmental, sustainable country and take his mission forward. And heritage is our legacy from the past, and it is our responsibility to preserve it. I know MEP is a very challenging subject for this. We heard many remarks earlier, but I wish this is debated in much bigger depth. This subject is of immense importance if we want to preserve our existing buildings. Thank you so much.
One question I had.
Yes, sir.
He is a very good teacher. You know, that's why, you know, I always listen to him very, very consciously. And he's a very pioneer in MEP, very innovative. Thank you very much, sir, for your wonderful presentation. Sir, I'm just very loudly thinking that you know, when we talk about heritage, we talk about conservation, and when we talk about building conservation, we still use very consciously lime and surkhi to retain the heritage and conserve the building. Can probably we look for MEP which was there at that time, and we practically bring that back, like bring back history into the heritage and try to see that how the great palaces were functioning in a cool and comfortable position without any HVAC, without even, I will say, lighting arrangement, without many other things put together, but they were probably most sustainable palaces of the world.
Thank you for that excellent question. I think you touched my heart. Basically, these all buildings are done, say, 400 years back. The way we lived then and what we are doing today and the way we are living our life has changed. The lifestyle changes have brought this probably requirements of change. You know, today, those days lights were not there, and now the electricity is there. So how do we complement that? So I think engineering systems will be a need if, because the transformation of technology is going to flow to these buildings. We are not going to live the way we lived 400 years back. So I personally feel we can't be going back to that level, but certainly we should learn, and there is no denial about it. To me, sir, we have not documented and we have not done research in terms of engineering and understanding what is happening. I just was telling you that how much energy is, say, flowing from Taj Mahal. It can be digitally mapped today, but we have not done those efforts. We don't even know what thermal mass is created, which can give that effect. So there is no marriage which has happened between architecture and engineering. And Jatin sir is here. He's from SEFT. I've been telling now Vimal also that this time has come that we start doing this. You know, our own projects, such wonderful buildings. If that orifice diameter of Hawa Mahal, if we can map that and understand what velocity of air is giving what cooling, it can be now done, but we have not done it. So I think I have also challenged our ISHRE, which is Indian Society of Refrigerating Engineers, and I've been requesting them that whatever work we do on technical side, if we are able to, in our generation, at least this could be a 5 years project, but if we can do that, I can assure and James can work with ISHRE and with architects like you. I saw many eminent architects. I think this is something which we must do. And if we are able to document that engineering, we should be teaching world. Why should a architect from US come and tell us what net zero building should be and how it should be designed? It is our legacy. I think we should be ashamed if somebody comes from US and tells us what is that. Or I must tell you, sir, Nitin sir, जब ये तोरण का प्रोजेक्ट हुआ था, तो सर ने मुझे बुलाया था आर्किटेक्ट साहब ने कि पंकज ये will this work? Because he told me very one simple thing, Nimit sir. I'm talking about Nimit ji. He is no more with us. We lost him in COVID, but he has done some fantastic work in this part of the country. And when he was designing this Torrent building, research building, I was quite young. I still remember 28 years back. He said, Pankaj, the client is appointing a consultant from UK to design this, and he's shown me the sketches. So do you think it will work? He's giving him more fees than what he's paying to architect. That was his pain also. So the moment I saw that, I told him it is going to work. So he said, how did you tell me in 1 second? I told him, sir, when I was kid, I was traveling to Mando many times. And in Mando we have this Rani Rupati Mahal where when we used to take our guests there, the guide will take us to terrace level and he will put one drum of water into the courtyard, that kind of a pond it was. It had sandstone below it. And you believe it, within half an hour when we will go down, after listening to his stories, there will be air draft, beautiful air draft. And that used to happen because it had a double wall which was extended about 6 meters. But the story guide will tell us that, you know, the Rani Rupmati was so beautiful that king didn't wanted anybody to be seen from outside. So he had made those walls, but they were acting as a draft. They were taking the draft up. The courtyard with the sandstone was giving the air with a higher density moisture, and the breeze used to be getting created. And this is exactly we were doing there in Torrent with a high mist system. We were creating a mist in the courtyard. And we had those towers which you saw, and those were taking the draft up. So I think this is how I think, but how many second or third building have come after that? This is done